Plot, Robin Hood, Men in Tights, 1993. Head, Actions. But, add a new plot, written by Hugo. Robin of Locksley, known as the most skilled archer of the land, has just returned to England after fighting in the Holy Crusades, where King Richard the Lionheart is also fighting. Robin finds that much of what he knew of England has gone to ruin, including his longtime family home having been taken away, all at the hands of the evil Prince John, Richard's brother who has assumed the throne in Richard's absence. Neurotic John is basically being controlled by the equally evil Sheriff of Rottingham, everything they do to fatten their own coffers at the expense of the commoners and peasants. As such, Robin recruits a band of merry men to help him battle Prince John and the Sheriff, they, who include, Blinkin, his blind longtime servant, Achu, the misguided son of a sneeze, the man who helped him escape from prison while fighting in the Crusades, Little John, who seems to think that being called little is only coincidental to the fact of he being a hulking man, and Little John's friend, Will Scarlet O'Hara, a master with daggers. In going to the palace, Robin falls in love at first sight with Marian of Bajel, a maid of the court. Marian is looking for the man who has the figurative and literal key to unlock her heart and private parts. The sheriff has his own eyes on Marian, he who in turn is the object of desire of Latrine, a powerful hag of a sorceress of the court. Robin, and the sheriff in particular, have a fight to the death mentality to achieve their end goals, which for both are protection of the throne for their trusted royal, and the heart and cherry of Maid Marian. The standard story of Robin Hood, evil Prince John is oppressing the people while good King Richard is away on the Crusades. Robin steals from the tax collectors, wins an archery contest, defeats the sheriff, and rescues Maid Marian. In this version, however, Mel Brooks adds his own personal touch, parodying traditional adventure movies, romance movies, and the whole idea of men running around the woods in tights. Voiceover off.
When you're blind and watching movies, what will you find? A blind superhero whose superpowers are acting like he's not blind. A sighted actor over-dramatically touching people's faces. Or maybe the whole joke is that they're bumping into different places. A spectacular, macular generation. From tunnel vision to your television, and do they off this movie with audio descriptions? They're movie buffs who know their stuff. You'll be thoroughly entertained. Twin Sky and Melissa throughout film history and Citizen White Cane.
Hey everybody, welcome to the second episode of Citizen White Cane, where we are blindsided by cinema. I'm Melissa.
And I'm Sky.
Hello.
Hi.
And we're two blind chicks who like to talk about movies.
Yeah. And the movie that we're talking about today is Men in Tights.
Right. Mel Brooks' Robin Hood, Men in Tights.
Yes. Yeah, where should we start?
Oh boy. I guess we should probably start with maybe general opinions. So when we talk about movies, we are reviewing movies that feature blind characters in them.
Yeah.
This character definitely had a much smaller role than the blind character in City Lights, and she didn't have a very big role either.
Yeah.
But still, I really wanted to revisit this one again. So.
Yeah, how was it? Because when did you see it originally? Because I had never seen it before.
Okay, so I watched it back in college because I had friends who are really into Mel Brooks because, you're in college and everybody has seen Spaceballs and Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein and Robin Hood Men in Tights. So that's how I'd seen it. Also, it's got Carrie Elwes as Robin Hood, who is also Wesley from The Princess Bride.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How has your opinion on it changed?
It was a really interesting experience watching it now versus watching it back in college, because the movie was released in 93.
Right.
And I was in college like 2006 onward. So I felt like it was easier to laugh at it in college, like right now, and and I'm not saying I didn't laugh, like it's a comedy, and I like it's joke after joke after joke and I like stuff like that. Like I like Airplane and I like other Mel Brooks films, but as far as Mel Brooks films like in the canon, this is like B-C tier Mel Brooks. Like I just kind of got bored after a while. It's like some of the jokes weren't. It is very long, and some of the jokes just weren't landing. Yeah, like I remember them, and all of the gay jokes made me really uncomfortable. Yeah,
there is a lot. There's like a handful of not very tasteful jokes, like part. I mean, blindness is one of the big ones that it is maybe some non-tasteful jokes, as we'll get to. But I feel like, yeah, there's definitely a lot of things, like the way that it treats the, like, there aren't gay characters, but yeah, there is like homophobic things, some of like questionable like racial things.
Oh my god, yeah. I mean, Dave Chappelle's in this movie as well. He plays Achu, and his whole reason for being in the film is to say quote unquote black things,
right? And like also just the fact that because the film starts with like Robin Hood being put in this prison that it's very unclear, because they say it's an Israeli prison, and then as they're leaving they say something about being in Africa,
right? It's
which those are not. Do not.
No, yeah.
Yep.
I think it's mentioned somewhere that he's in prison in Jerusalem. But
still not in Africa.
Still not in Africa, no. But you get it's hard to really pick apart this one, because it is a comedy. It's not meant to be taken seriously at all.
Yeah. That's right. And it is hard, because I think that, like, in a lot of ways humor has changed what we think of as like acceptable. I mean, it's hard, because I think that they're like satire can work, but I think sometimes it's, instead of what is trying to be satire, can kind of just come off as like not like just still kind of punching down, basically.
Right. Yeah. And that's. Yeah, it's punching up versus punching down, which is interesting, because Blinkin, the blind character in this film, who is Robin Hood's childhood manservant, is mostly punched down. However, he gets a few times where he is punched up, which is, and those work. Those are really great jokes like that. Those actually really made me smile, and I want to say that. I didn't think any of this came off as super mean-spirited. Like, I know Mel Brooks doesn't hate gay people and doesn't hate blind people, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think that that's part of his humor, is to be, like, to kind of poke fun at things, but I think it doesn't really, it works better when it's, like poking fun at, like, Jewish stereotypes and stuff. Like, that works a lot better, because it's coming from a place of experience,
right?
And I think that like a lot of it has to do with where the actual lived experience is coming from, because I think you can kind of, like, if you are a blind person kind of making fun of blind stereotypes, that's going to seem a lot different,
right,
than when you're a sighted person. Like, and true of all identities.
Right. Well,
like
and the movie suffers from characters who are fairly well, like, there's no, except for Robin Hood and maybe Maid Marian, there aren't anyone that really is super well, like, thought out or defined. Yeah. So it suffers from having characters who are more thought out and more defined, and then stock characters who are one note, who are jokes, who are there to be the joke, basically.
Right. And I think that like. Yeah, and I mean, there is, like, a lot of the characters are some kind of, like, there is a lot of playing on, like, minority identities, and so I think that, like, you have to be very tactful when you have very few characters that are, like, that do have that privilege, but you do also have, like, the main characters, like, because Robin Hood has all the privilege,
right? Of course, yeah.
and then even, like, because I guess we should start by kind of talking about some of the plot, which, right. Pardon, you're gonna have to lead a little bit on this, because I'm a little bit more rusty, because I saw it like more than a week ago now.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, no, I can do this.
Yeah. But yeah. Here.
So Robin Hood at the beginning of the film is imprisoned in Jerusalem, and he and another gentleman named Sneeze, right, played by Isaac Hayes, they escape the prison. And a Sneeze says that when Robin Hood gets back to England, he should locate his son, Achu.
Right.
And so, yes. So, and then there's this really legitimate, funny throwaway gag of Robin Hood swimming to England because he just like runs off into the ocean, and you're like, well, what's gonna happen? And it's just him just swims back to England,
Which makes no.
No, and I like weird, absurdist stuff like that.
Right.
Like, those are the jokes that I think are really funny. Or I'm a very wordy dialogue person, so like joke
Right.
like achu and sneeze. You know, it's not a very well thought out joke, but it's funny.
Yeah, I like part of me I wanted to find it funny. I feel like a little bit it's like kind of cringeworthy because it's like sort of making fun of names like in a way that's not that, like, you know, which I do those characters actually have like a place that it's part of the Crusades,
Right.
and why is a sneeze why is he in the Jerusalem
We don't know.
prison?
I don't remember if I don't think we know. He is a joke. He is
Right.
literally there because he's a joke. He's there to help Robin Hood escape, to get him back to England, and to tell him to find his son.
Right,
And
and to
you
introduce
literally
that
never hear
sidekick.
from this character again.
Right, and it is like basically just like an early on plot device to have them like kind of set up the main kind of group of characters.
Yep. And the main plot of the story is it's Robin Hood. I mean, he's parodying Prince of Thieves,
Right.
basically. But it's honestly, it's pretty much the same plot as like the Disney Robin Hood. There's a few more characters and a few more deviations, but it's the same plot. Robin goes back to Locksley because he is Robin of Locksley in Sherwood Forest, and he finds that his family hall is being foreclosed on.
Right. And so when he does arrive back like to the home, you have like we see it by the introduction is like they're actually literally physically taking the
Right.
infrastructure of the
They're
house.
just gonna move the entire
Right.
They're foreclosing and they're gonna move the entire castle.
Right. And then you like see the floor.
The foundation, right?
Right.
Well, and that's another thing that I personally really enjoy about Mel Brooks movies is all of the weird modern anachronisms that are just put in there and then nobody says anything about them. They're just accepted. That's funny. I enjoy those.
I sometimes they're funny to me, and then sometimes I have like too literal of a brain that I'm like, I know I should find this funny, but I'm like, but that doesn't make any sense.
No. Oh God. So you probably haven't seen Ella Enchanted, but
I did.
You did,
but
okay.
a long time ago.
It's the escalator in Ella Enchanted.
Oh gosh. Yeah, what? Because I remember reading the book too, but now I can't. What happens with that?
The book is great. It's literally a throwaway gag. They're at Ella and her friend are at a mall, in quotes, and they're coming down this escalator, which is a wooden staircase that is cranked by workers at the bottom.
Right.
Who are just cranking. And it's not acknowledged, it isn't mentioned, it just is there. And
Right.
that's why it's funny.
Yeah, I think that like, well, and Ella Enchanted is supposed. Is it like fantasy? I mean, it is fantasy, but is it supposed to take place in like an actual time period?
No.
Right.
No, it's completely. It is a movie that takes place in a medieval pastiche.
Right, but not. Which I guess you could kind of argue that Robin Hood in a way does, but it doesn't involve any like specifically supernatural elements that would make it seem like that it is a fictional. And you do have like references to the Crusades. There's really specific like grounding with like who the well, I actually so this is the other thing is I don't know any like this especially European history like before like 1800 or
I mean, I definitely cannot sit here and call myself an expert on European history, but I've seen a lot of Robin Hood movies.
Right. Well, that's really and that's I don't think Mel Brooks has a lot of experience with that. With like that history as much as he's seen a lot of Robin Hood movies as well. Yeah.
Right. And again, that is not the story that he wants to tell.
Right.
It's
Right. It's supposed to be ridiculous.
Right.
Like, and I think that, yeah, I think the anachronisms, well, because what part of it for me is just like that it is made in 93, and watching it now, there's so many of the anachronisms are also anachronistic to now.
Oh,
like they're very like rooted in that era.
Well, they're rooted in now, but they're rooted in the 90s.
Right, they're rooted in the now that is the 90s. Yeah, exactly.
The merry men who kind of narrate the story are a bunch of black dudes who rap because it's the 90s.
There's a lot of, and there's like, they even have like references to really specific like songs or people, like celebrities at the time. I wish I could remember now, but some of them are just so dated, like just so of 93.
Well, it's dated.
Yeah.
I mean, that's unfortunately, and I think this is what this movie suffers from, whereas like you have the producers, Spaceballs, Blazing Saddles, I mean the list, Young Frankenstein. This movie suffers a little bit because it is dated.
Yeah, it's
so
very
dated, and it's a product of its time. Whereas the other movies, yeah, they're older, but they don't. And of course, major shout out to History of the World Part 1, which is like the unsung gem of Mel Brooks canon, in my humble opinion. Anyway, but yeah, no, those movies feel timeless.
Right. And this feels very, very, very 90s. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I appreciate in the rapping, though. They do the rap, and then they'll break every minute and go, hey, nani, 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 hey, nani.
Okay. So I'm wondering also, since this is kind of like some background on the movie, but then like the character that we're here talking about.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So
no.
Yeah. So the castle gets moved away, and the foundation is left, and you see Blinkin, Robin Hood's childhood manservant, on the John. That's that
introduction.
Tell you what, that's funny later. Yeah. So he's on the toilet, and I did not catch this until I was watching a couple of YouTube videos, just like commentary on this movie, just to see what other people maybe had to say. So I didn't catch this the first time, but he's reading a Braille centerfold.
Right.
So
well,
like,
is he reading? Because he's like, it is just a slab of, it almost doesn't look like paper. It looks more like it's just this kind of like weird, unwieldy piece of something.
It might have been parchment. But
maybe.
I don't know.
But then it like has like a woman like indented on the paper.
Because it's Braille.
Like right.
It's a Braille centerfold.
Which is, I mean, I think part of, I don't know, part of why that gag didn't work for me is he's holding it to the camera in a way that feels extremely unnatural.
Well, yeah, because it's a blind joke for sighted people.
Right.
That's this whole movie.
Right,
It's blind jokes for sighted people.
Yeah, exactly.
He has the traditional identifier, I am blind, the brown black sunglasses.
Right, which would absolutely, it's funny because like a cane would be more likely to exist, I feel. I mean, like, no, I don't know, but like, because we did look it up and it is like 20th century, the cane. But neither sunglasses nor a cane would exist at that time. So if you're not going to have the cane, then sunglasses don't technically make any sense either.
Right, but again, it's an anachronism.
Right. But then it's like they don't have the anachronism of a cane, which like more people wouldn't realize is an anachronism. Whereas sunglasses, I feel like most people could be like, that wouldn't have been there.
Yeah. Well, and this is the problem we're going to run into because this is a blind character written as a joke for sighted people.
Right.
It's so fun story. So the actor who plays Blinkin is Mark Blankfield, and he has played another infamous blind character by the name of George from an old show called Good and Evil. It was some Jekyll and Hyde thing. I don't know. Not important. The important thing is in the first episode of the show, he's in love with one of the women. The show is about two women.
Okay.
Who were one was a scientist, and he's in love with the woman who's a scientist. and he goes to visit her at her lab, and he does have a white cane.
Okay.
I can't remember if he's wearing glasses or not, but he does have a white cane, and he walks in to visit her and completely destroys the lab in an attempt to try and find her. I mean, it's this lab full of glass. Like, there's just glass beakers on all the tables, glass Bunsen burners, test tubes. I mean, he just walks through and destroys it.
Right.
As a blind person, I'm completely offended. Like, that's not a funny joke. That's just prolonging a stereotype.
Right.
As an actor, it is a really cool bit of physical comedy.
Yeah. I think that's a really difficult thing. Is like I think it is like such a trope at this point. That as kind of a way for doing physical comedy is to, like, when playing blind characters, that's like kind of like you can use playing a blind character as a form of physical comedy where you make it very unrealistic.
Oh, sure.
And I think that I wish that there was a better attempts at doing it, because I don't think that blindness necessarily, it's always offensive if you're doing physical comedy. I think there are ways to like be realistically doing comedy, like where it feels natural, because obviously, like, because basically then the joke of, like, you know, with destroying the lab is like a blind person is just an inherently incompetent. And just anytime they interact with the world, it can be funny because they can't. Like, and
exactly,
that's basically the punchline. As opposed to, like, if you did things that were a little bit more tactful, I feel like you could do more things, like, and it's, you know, it is a difficult proposition, but I think that there are ways of, like, when people change your environment, like, that is an annoying thing, and I feel like the joke is on someone who, like, if someone moves a chair, then, and someone sits down, and they're like, where did the chair go? Like, you can do things like that, where though that is, like, just, I think a lot of blind people would be like, this is really makes me mad, because that would be such a rude thing to do.
Well, yeah, and that whole point actually brings up another movie that I really want us to watch, but I know that next week is your week, so, but it's, I've got one in the chamber. No, that's okay. Nice. That's totally fine. Right, so we meet this character, Blinkin, and he is introduced as Robin Hood's manservant, and we find him...
Right, which is an odd profession.
For a blind person? Yeah.
And a manservant is just a funny... I mean, I don't know if that is the right...
That's the right term.
Well,
I believe so.
No, that's the one they use, I believe. Yeah. It is. I don't know if it would be correct for that time period, which also, like, Robin Hood is like this kind of like working class hero. Why does he have a servant? Which is something
because because his family was wealthy.
Right. But then and then it was taken away. I guess that makes sense. It is like, I feel like it makes it lamer which I don't. Okay, so now I'm like wondering if I just don't know what Robin Hood is. But I always thought of Robin Hood as being more of like not born into wealth, but I'm right. I might be wrong.
It depends. I think it depends on the story and the depiction that you're watching.
Right.
Some of them, he grows up in Sherwood Forest, and he's a common person, and he's Robin Hood. Some of them, I think maybe in the actual myth story, he comes from wealth because he's Robin of Locksley,
right,
and not just Robin Hood,
right.
Right. So he finds a Chew, Dave Chappelle's character. So then they wander off into the forest, and then we meet Maid Marian.
Oh yeah, which is kind of like an intercut. Like when we first meet her, it's like happening in a different place because I think first we meet them. This is another thing. The plot is there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's kind of convoluted.
No, you're right. Because first, before we meet her, we meet the sheriff of Rottingham.
Right, and what does he have a name? I can't remember.
I think it's
other than the sheriff.
Literally just the sheriff of. Oh, No, they give his real name at the end, but I can't remember
Who cares?
what it is.
And he's like
just
a tool.
Yeah, he's a tool. He's a tool.
Yeah.
He's a tool. He's a giant, massive tool. I can't help it. I found him kind of charming in a really weird way.
Did you continue to find him charming throughout the movie?
Oh no,
Yeah.
absolutely not, absolutely not. But
just at the very beginning.
Yeah, at the very beginning, I was like, okay, I guess I can see it. Okay, and in the way he says everything out of order.
Right.
Which is a joke that's done like 3 or 4 times and then just abandoned.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of like kind of just abandoning things or like stuff where it's kind of like things are set up. Because there are some things that are set up that pay off, but it sometimes feels like.
Well, and I think that's the nature of the beast. It's Mel Brooks. He's going to throw everything at the wall.
Yeah.
And see what sticks. And if you don't like that
That's
joke,
really true.
there's literally another joke around the corner.
Right.
And you'll forget about.
And it's hard because, like, I think, like, having a lot of jokes, it can be fun, but it feels forced when they're, like, a lot of times gags will kind of be at the detriment to the plot, which this is a very improv thing. Where they always, like, say in improv, like, don't make a gag that is basically throwing the scene under the bus, like, and I feel like a lot of stuff kind of does that, where, like, to make a joke, you are kind of disregarding the plot or
right, but
like kind of just taking a detour randomly.
Yeah, but you also don't have to do that. You can. It's also about finding the game of the scene. If your little joke, if it doesn't completely derail the scene, so you can have that one joke, and
right.
you can make it so that it forwards the plot or enhances the scene, or it's just funny.
Right. I think I don't know. I feel like a lot of them are just funny.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite
like
one of my favorite things to do is if they mean to say something but they say it wrong, and then that is how that thing is pronounced.
Oh yeah.
For the entire scene, and then then the scene could maybe become about that thing.
Right. Whereas a lot of it is kind of like there'll be like a quick running gag, but then and now we're talking maybe a little too without specifics, which is
I'm a sucker for a good running gag though.
Well, a
Seriously.
running gag is good. Yeah, that's true. I feel like there are some there are a few running gags, but there also is not as many. Like, it feels like you're just kind of, like, going one thing right after another, and that's why it's kind of hard to remember all of the plot, because a lot of times there'll be a detour where, in retrospect, you're like, what? Wait, why were they fighting here? Like, what?
Right. Oh, so we meet... So the whole encounter with the sheriff happens because this young boy comes running up to Robin... and Achu and Blinkin and
like
he's just screaming.
That I actually found really funny.
It was actually pretty funny.
That was my favorite joke.
He's like this blood-curdling scream and then telling about the sheriff and then the sheriff appears and they beat the sheriff and he thanks them and then he just starts screaming and runs off in the other direction.
Right, because he's like, I will thank you for doing this. I will tell everyone. Like, because it's that reversal of just being like at the beginning, you just think he's screaming and running away from the sheriff, but then once the sheriff is not taken down, but sent on his back on his way by Robin Hood, then the kid just that's just how he walks, is by screaming. Like, bloody murder. That to me is very funny. I don't know why that's my kind of humor, but it just is, like, because it's like a weird, because I like that because it's a weird gag that you're starting the scene with that could have been thrown away, and to and then to use it again, like, it makes it much funnier, because then you're like, it's almost like a joke on the, like, just how the movie is, like, kind of the fact that it is a plot device, and it's making fun of that because it doesn't make any sense that he would be screaming.
Well, and we're sitting here trying to talk about jokes, and talking about comedy is like trying to shave a balloon. Yeah, the balloon's gonna pop, and the more you the more you dissect a joke, the less funnier it is. That's
definitely true. It's well, why do we even have this podcast? No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so after sheriff, that's when we see, what is the name of the...
Oh, Maid Marian?
Yeah, we see Maid Marian.
So we meet Maid Marian. And she's singing the traditional I Want song.
Right.
This is the one thing I really do enjoy about Mel Brooks is he subverts everything.
Yeah, I like when it is, like, trying to subvert the more kind of, like, the not just aspects of, like, because some of the jokes are just like making fun of like someone's accent or like they're very specific things. I like more when it's making fun of the tropes, which is true of the whole thing with her. And
yeah, so she's singing the I Want song in the bathroom. I can't even tell you how it goes, but she's singing it, and all of a sudden the window breaks and there's a camera lens.
Oh my god.
Like paparazzi.
It's so ridiculous.
Which, yeah, I don't know. I should feel a joke should make me feel really uncomfortable, but I just think it's funny. And then you get my least favorite running gag in the movie, which is the goddamn chastity belt.
Yeah.
I don't care.
It doesn't, and it's kind of like... I feel like it's not the kind of like sexist jokes are hit or miss because it's trying not to be sexist.
Right? No, I don't think it's a sexist joke. I don't like it because her vagina is literally a prize.
Right,
that Robin
right,
Hood is trying
exactly.
to win, and I'm not here for that. Like,
yeah, because it doesn't feel like, because sometimes it's like, oh, we're subverting this thing of like her, being. I mean, I guess what exactly are they subverting?
Well, the virginal heroine.
Right.
She's perfect and pure and has to stay that way. And there were, social norms about like you shouldn't have sex before you were married and
right.
da 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 da. And I mean, just the whole idea of a metal chastity belt. That's funny. Like it is a physical thing.
Right.
Right. Her vagina is literally under lock and key.
Right.
But the part, so that's funny. But the part I don't enjoy is it's under lock and key, so a man can get at it. Like she can't explore anything about herself. And again, I can definitely be accused of reading way too much into all this.
No, this isn't reading too much into it. I feel like that's, yeah, no, I'm with you on all this. I think it is definitely very problematic that it's like he has to have the key and that and it's set up that way and then it's not really subverted by the end because he does have the key.
He's given the key to the greatest treasure.
Right, which is her vagina.
Right. Which I think that might be the subversion. I think that I think that is kind of funny.
It is it is a little bit funny because it is so ridiculous. Yeah. But then it's also like once you start thinking about it, you're like, wait a second, this is problematic.
Yeah, well, and then it just becomes this like running thing through the entire movie, and I'm just like, I'm so tired of this joke. It pays off in the end, absolutely. Yeah,
which we could talk about. I love how we're talking about a lot of the different aspects of the movie that don't involve the blind character.
Oh, I know. When I watched it again, I was like, God damn, this is going to be so hard to talk about because Blinkin is like, he is a side character with a capital S.
Yeah, and I think though he does have a lot of. I wonder how much of it is like we're not thinking about him because he's not in as much in the movie, or if it's also because he does have a decent amount of gags, but they all are really just stressful because they're not good. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Okay, so we move past Maid Marian, of course, and her maid servant, Broomhilda.
I didn't. So the Broomhilda stuff bothered me because it's like, why does she care so much about her sex life? Doesn't make sense. And then Broomhilda seemed just very much like kind of a stereotypical character that like was very like desexualized.
Yes,
and
correct. She is the fat character.
Right, exactly.
She's the fat lady that no one no one wants.
Right, which is not good.
No, I mean,
Yeah,
she's a fat joke. That is what she's there for.
Yeah, and that really did not feel good. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, and I actually kind of liked her as far as like her accent and stuff. But no, she's there to cock block Robin.
Right.
That's what she's there for.
Exactly, which is just like, so it's tropey on a lot of different respects, and then it's also problematic of like, not only is she like desexualized, she also is actively getting in the way of two other characters having sex, which just feels like really taking that, you know, problematic thing to the next level. Like,
but it's also it's also going back to tropes again. If you think about like fairy stories, you know, you've got Maid Marian, or you have the lady, and then you have her trusted lady in waiting,
right?
And you know the prince or whoever you want in the fairy story, like they can't. Their reward at the end is the girl.
Right.
They get the girl, they get the kiss, they get the whatever, they get her vagina in this case, you know. But I will say, like, it didn't feel like they didn't love each other. I mean, also it's hard not to have chemistry with Carrie Elways.
Right.
Just
I mean,
saying.
it definitely felt like, I think it was just the idea that they, like, I mean, they seemed like definitely fully consenting adults, and that anyone would care, which obviously, I mean, this is very much not just, this is taking a very 2019
right.
2020
it's
approach to
it's our modern sensibilities looking at this, being like, well, what, you know, she can do it with whoever she wants,
right?
But,
like,
you know,
why would two consenting adults why would there be any friction for them? Like, they're two consenting adults, and it's like, it's not even like, you know, there's a love triangle where people have different feelings for each, you know, that kind of plot. It just wasn't even that. It was just like a bunch of people that like wanted to stop them. And then also like the rapist, who was an additional thing.
Oh yeah, we'll get to the end. That is probably my least favorite bit in the entire movie, and it still makes me feel weird.
Well, because it's like genuinely rape.
Oh yeah,
like, which is not what you're wanting in a movie like this.
I'm like, good. We're gonna have a rape joke and gay jokes. Perfect. Yeah. So let's see. So we meet Maid Marian, and then we have to meet Prince John and King John and the Sheriff of Rottingham again, because they are conferencing in the throne room, and Rottingham has to tell Prince John that he basically got his ass handed to him in a kind of a funny bit about how John doesn't want bad news. Oh yeah, so he just has to tell him
maniacally just says everything with a giant smile, but it's all the same information.
Yeah, it's terrible news.
Yeah. I mean, that works. I think like that's kind of funny because it is like that's just, and it's, you know, maybe because it is very just, you know, two white people. Oh. So you can kind of laugh at them.
Yeah. Well, and Prince John is this very like whiny King John. I always want to. I've seen the Disney version of Robin Hood the most, so it's always Prince John, but it's King John in this version. But he's just super whiny and smarmy and just,
He is like smarmy, but also just like ineffective. Also,
yes,
like, and because like the sheriff is more smarmy. Like, he is, like, especially, well, because he's also a rapist, so not cool. Yeah. But yeah, so I think that like, that the king, is more just kind of not, because it just not very helpful in any way, and just is kind of cowardly is more his deal than he is like
that's a better way to describe it. Well, the king comes up with things to do, and then Rottingham executes them, literally does them. So they have to catch Robin Hood, so they go, and we meet the character of Latrine.
Oh God. Yeah,
isn't she funny? Because she's an ugly woman, and no one would ever want to have anything to do with her.
Which, like, what's wrong with her? She has a big nose, which is like this weirdly anti-Semitic.
I know. I didn't think she was that ugly at all.
I know.
Really, I thought she was really funny.
Yeah, she really is just not that, like, unappealing, I don't think.
But she's obsessed with the sheriff of Rottingham.
Right.
She wants him badly.
Which you're like, why?
Yeah, I know, right? But it is kind of interesting to see that those roles reversed. Well, I mean, obviously, like, the sheriff is a lustful man, but you almost never see, like, a lustful woman.
Right, but then it is like, but she's like punished for it, which makes it less fun.
Kind of, but then she kind of sort of gets what she wants in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, she does, but then I think you're also just like, because she wants to be with the person that we now know is a rapist. So for me, I'm just thinking like he is
right. But
like you can fall in love with an abusive person. Sure,
but then isn't he? It's framed as this is his punishment as well, like
right
because he didn't die. He didn't die. He now has to go live out his life as a sex slave to latrine, which I am sure that is what's going to happen. I don't know. For me, it was just kind of refreshing to see like a woman who unabashedly doesn't give a shit about like his mind or his anything. I mean, she is how do the kids say it? She is after that D.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely true. It was hard because I feel like she is so reviled by all the characters that you're like, what? Just because she like wants to have sex? Like I felt like it was the movie was judging her because all the characters that we are, just every single character, the ones we're supposed to like and the ones we're not supposed to like, all think that like kind of contribute to this idea that she's very ugly. And so there's not really a lot of, you just don't feel great about that like, oh well, she like wants to have sex because who would have sex with her kind of thing.
Right. Also there's a funny joke about how she's talking about all these potions that she's going to make and the brews and everything and the ingredients that she's going to use, and we find out that she's the cook.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so she's played up to be like this ugly old witch that is in every single fairy story, and yet you find out she's the cook. And she changed her name. Her name wasn't Latrine. Her name was in fact Shithouse.
Yeah, that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we meet her, and there was a potion mentioned, but I don't think she ever delivers on that.
Yeah, there's not a lot of consistencies with her, especially with her.
Mm-hmm. Well, and meanwhile, all this is happening, and Maid Marian and Brunhilde have escaped.
Right.
And they've gone off to Sherwood Forest. Oh, right.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that happen.
Yeah, they have to escape because they have to warn Robin that there's an archery contest that's going to happen, and they are going to kill him. They're going to assassinate him.
Right. And this is after like a whole bunch of stuff.
Oh God, the friggin' Godfather scene. I don't care about the Godfather too much. Sorry, I don't. I have to rip up my cinephile card or whatever. But
I mean, yeah, I don't.
care.
I was surprised as someone who's not actually seen The Godfather. I was surprised at just how many things where I'm like, okay, well, we have to do this, and then we have to do this. I'm like, I haven't even seen this movie, and I know all the tropes that we have to hit.
Yeah, because The Godfather it's Godfather. The three films, they're some of the most famous films of all time,
and like
they're
the
iconic.
Most imitated, like. Yes. Kind of like parodied thing, so that I at this point know like you have to make an offer, camera fee, like I just know all the different lines that we have to.
The day of the Don's daughter's wedding,
right? The daughter's wedding and the animal that he's
the lizard, the joke that I thought was actually really funny though, and it was funny because it was so understated, was he asks the Don character played by Dom DeLuise where he's from, and he says, Jersey, because obviously, he's Godfather, Italian, mafioso.
Right.
But if you really think about it,
because
Jersey is a place in England.
Right, exactly.
I love it.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, it is a very...
So that actually made me chuckle to think like, oh my God, yeah, there's people up in Jersey.
Yeah, because they make a few references to it. Yeah.
So they're going to send Dirty Ezio,
who's
going to assassinate Robin.
Right. And then they do, and we're kind of jumping ahead. I think we've skipped a lot of also the Blinkin stuff.
Oh my God, yes. Oh God. Okay, no, wait, because that's coming up. Because Maid Marian and Broomhilda escaped the forest. And Blinkin is in the forest. And...
Right, well, because in between, because they, like, go, because, yeah, they're... I don't think we really talked about when they... Before all that, when Robin Hood and crew, like, attack them during the banquet. That scene.
Right.
Which is pretty early on, because it's
yeah.
also where Robin Hood meets
Marian. Because he brings the boar.
Yeah.
Or the pig to the banquet scene. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so during that banquet scene, they meet Marian. There's just, we have both sides of, like, we have most of the characters in the movie are kind of in that scene. And it's kind of like a turning point scene because they meet, Robin Hood and Marian meet. And then they also, basically, well, they destroy, like, the banquet hall, so it's, like, kind of like Robin Hood is now more of a foe, because he's, like, coming, he's not just attacked the sheriff, he's kind of just attacked them where they're at, and insulted the king because he's, like, the interim king when his brother's off at the Crusades, because, like, this is all taking place during the Crusades, which, it's funny, because the movie does not seem, the Crusades are very...
It's all it is a plot device.
Right.
It's a thing that
like it kind of
King
makes fun
Richard
of
is
like
at.
not really even knowing what the Crusades are. I feel like there's a few jokes where it's just like that's just a thing like that you do. I don't know.
I can't remember what Blinkin is doing.
Yeah, so that was one of the ones that bothered me because they have during the giant fighting sequence, he is like attacking a pole.
Oh, I remember now. Yeah, he's going to town on these barrels of probably full of drink or whatever, but he's got a sword and he's going to town on the barrels.
Yeah, well, and then I think there's also like, maybe I'm wrong, but I think at one point near the end, he's just like hitting, maybe it is barrels, but like he's hitting this one big like pole that looks almost like scaffolding of some kind. And then, but you could be right, and I'm just not seeing it right. But then it's just like, and the shot is so weird. It's like sped up, but it's like really wonky, and it feels very inhuman. I don't know
like
what.
Blink and you miss it, literally. Because
Yeah.
I almost missed it and happened to glance and I'm like, oh, that is Blinkin.
Yeah, it is like, but then yeah, he's like just destroying the thing, and like basically in that fight he's completely useless.
I mean, yeah. I guess I will give the movie credit for the character of Blinkin. It doesn't just sit on his ass the entire movie, and he isn't told that he can't do anything. Like, he participates in all of the capers and all, you know.
So then he's very ineffective 95% of the time. Like, that there's, most of the time, it's like, because they're not putting any limits on him, but that's almost like just a way to humiliate him.
Sure. I mean, it's, yeah, you know. Yeah, and I'm sure even Mel Brooks would say, like, this is definitely not a movie about empowering a blind character.
Right. And I think that's, like, why it definitely feels like it's at the expense entirely of the blind character and not at all, like, kind of making fun of people being... Because it's not even, like, as much as, like, it is a trope to still be, like, the super-powered blind person, that's still more fun to watch than, like, someone who's, like, blind and, like, thinks they can do everything but can't. Like, because it's really the other way around. Like, blind people genuinely don't think they can do as much. Like, we're told that we can't do as much as we actually can. Like, and so...
Yeah, and I mean, I know my limits as a blind person. Now, some of them are self-imposed limits that I can overcome and should probably work on overcoming. Right. But, you know, I'm not going to get in a car anytime soon.
Right. And try to drive. Yeah. But I think that's, like, I do think, like, there are a decent amount of things that I, growing up, did not feel like I could do growing up, I guess, is relative because I wasn't diagnosed until I was 15. But it changed, like, what was possible, I think, once. Like, and what I felt was possible or was expected of me when I was diagnosed. Because I think that there's a lot of misunderstandings of what blind people are able to do. And it's, you know, still something I experience all the time, where people are underestimating what I'm capable of doing. So I feel like that is definitely something that feels way more true when it's like people expect less of you. But in this, it's like, oh, it's funny that they're like expecting him to like to, you know, help.
Right. Well,
and he can't.
And it all comes back to like you kind of pity him.
Right.
Oh, he's trying so hard. Oh, don't count him out, you know. Don't he's just trying, you know.
Right. And then it's like, and then, oh, well, you know, it's funny because doesn't know what he's doing at all.
At least he's included.
Right.
It's, I guess, the whole trope of like the blind person fucking up and then that's the joke is just, it just feels, it's so reductive.
Yeah, it is. And,
you know, we don't learn anything about this character.
Right.
I'm not sure he has very few speaking lines.
Yeah, which
in the film
makes no sense for a blind character.
Stuff,
right? Because like at least in like City Lights, there is an excuse of there's no sound, so there was incentive not to.
I mean, but even though, and this is actor brain talking again, but even though he has no speaking rules, like he gets to do all of that physical stuff, and he's great at it.
Right,
he's a really great physical comedian.
But then the physical comedy, the physical comedy is like at the expense of blind people.
Yes.
Yes,
because they make it out of the banquet hall, and they make it back to the forest, and then this is when Marion and Broomhilda come to warn them. And this is probably one of my least favorite Blinkin moments is the bit with the ladder.
Yeah, which I'm trying to like as they're talking, I'm trying to remember exactly why that happens. That
and the fact that he's always asking who's talking.
Right.
Just like he doesn't recognize voices, and I'm just like, come on, that is like that.
Yeah. There's a few of that. It's like no. They have pretty distinctive voices.
Talking.
Yeah.
You really like it's a stupid throwaway joke. I'm like, you know who's talking,
right?
You've grown up with Robin Hood, you know,
right? So
sure,
why couldn't you?
If it's someone you've never met before, yeah, absolutely, who's talking,
right?
But I'm just like, that
does not.
You gotta be kidding, right?
Yeah, it's definitely that part. Yeah, there's a few things where you're like, what? Why would he not know who this is? And then
he asks who goes there, I believe, who's coming, and it's Marion and Brunhilde
for the ladders or
in the forest, right, for the ladder, and then he has to climb. He's on a high height or a balcony or something that they've constructed, and he has to get down. So he makes for the ladder. He finds it, sets himself up, drops it, and then falls off. And I guess maybe I don't like it because it's playing on like that is one of my biggest fears. Is like I have to climb. If I have to climb down something.
I know, because I'm like when I was watching that, I was like, oh my god, like I had like a physically fear response.
Yeah,
because I don't like that's the most terrifying thing. Like before I knew you could just be like, I'm not gonna fuck with the ladder. Mm-hmm. Like there were so many situations that I was in where I'm like, oh my god, I feel like it's so fucking scary. Ladders are so scary, and I like now I'm just like I refuse. Yeah, I'm not gonna do anything with the ladder.
Ladders are terrifying because they are unanchored stairs.
Yeah.
Is what they are.
They shouldn't exist because stairs are scary enough.
Yeah, but at least they're anchored to the fucking ground.
Right. And then the higher you get up, it's just like so much more precarious with every step. Like it gets worse and worse and worse and worse.
Oh yeah, no. Not a fan of that joke.
Yeah, well, and also it's like he grabs the ladder, right? And then it's like, why does it fall? And how does he not know it fell?
I think he bumps it with his butt. Like he grabs the ladder. Goes to set himself up. He turns around so he can climb down said ladder, right, and he bumps it out of the way and just apparently couldn't tell that there's no ladder and falls off.
Yeah, which doesn't make any sense at all. It makes, like, because I was so confused. I was like, this is a land that's entirely feeling. Like, you don't use your eyesight for that. Like, it was nighttime. Like, I feel like a blind person would be technically in that situation more adept, because at least we're used to, like, using our hands to figure this stuff out and not, like, relying on, spotty vision in the dark.
And it's like we said in the beginning, it is a blind character with blind jokes written by and for sighted people.
Right. And it is, I think that it's true that there is it is sometimes even more frustrating when it's like, this is written for sight people, but you're not even, like, really thinking through blindness at all. Like, the destroying the lab thing is really terrible and offensive, but at least it's like you're thinking about what it would be like to be blind. Whereas, like, some of these are like, that doesn't actually make any sense. Like, the not knowing who's talking and the not knowing the ladder's there. Like, that's, like, stuff that blind people would be better at. Like, there's no reason to believe that could be it doesn't make logical sense even. Like, is at least if you just went blind, you might bump into things. But, like, if you just went blind, you could still feel a ladder. Like, that wouldn't affect your ability to feel the ladder.
Right. So we get that spectacular fall from the balcony from Blinkin, and then they arrive at the forest, and we get a pretty funny musical bit. Actually, I thought this was funny because this reminded me a lot of Spamalot.
Oh yeah,
a lot of the musical numbers are very reminiscent of Spamalot.
That's true.
And this definitely came.
I was gonna
first.
say this came first.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. I mean, you have the whole Men in Tights sequence.
Yeah.
Which always makes me smile. Like,
I kind of like that one.
I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tights. Yeah. That's. I was looking forward to that. And then you have Robin Hood sings this love ballad to Marian in the forest, but he sings it super loud.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because you'd think, like, you have these, you have a Broadway scene and you have two people who are supposed to be in love and they're standing fairly close together on stage, and they have to belt these things. Right. Aren't they just literally screaming in each other's face?
Yeah, it is really that, and that scene is so, it's also weird because you're like, it is so not them singing.
Oh no, it's not at all. And I think that's I think that's the joke, is it's the dubbed voices.
Right, are supposed to be ridiculous, but then it's also, maybe I miss it, but I don't really understand, like, other than the fact that you would dub people's voices. Like, do they make a joke beforehand, like, about it being dubbed? I can't remember.
They don't make a joke about it being dubbed, but Carrie Elwes does say something about, I can't remember the setup, but the punchline is, yeah, and I'm Robin Hood and I can do an English accent.
Right. Though, isn't that later?
I can do a good English accent. That might have been later.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, it is definitely, like, yeah, I feel like there's a line going on in that scene when they're singing to each other. Because they're also, like, it's that there's their romance, and there's, like, there's an underlying joke about that we don't know that she has. There's, like, the dramatic irony that Robin Hood does not know yet, that the audience knows, but Robin Hood does not know that she has that chastity belt. Mm-hmm. And then there's also, like, the fact that it's dubbed, and that it's also, like, that they're yelling at each other, and then it's also that they're behind a curtain, and all of the Men in Tights crew is watching them, and so it's just like, okay, guys, and like, what is the joke? Like, none of these go together.
And there's so no. There's so many jokes. Like, it's layers and layers and layers of jokes. You didn't even mention the sword. They're behind. Oh, right.
Well, that's kind of part of at least that one kind of goes in hand with the current one. The other ones all feel like completely different jokes.
No, I think they all tie together because it's all musical jokes. It's all Broadway. He's joking about how Broadway works. He's joking about the fairy tale, the fairy tale tropes. He's
what else? Like dubbing though is technically not a Broadway joke.
No, but dubbing is something
like a
that's
movie joke.
Yeah, dubbing is something obviously that's been done throughout Hollywood and for all times, and still people are still dubbed to this day. Right.
But then the chastity belt thing is more of a plot. Like, I do feel like the jokes are too they're too categorically different, and then they're all kind of happening at once in a way that it's just like some of them feel accidental because there's just too many, like, because I feel like when you have a song you want, it's kind of it's like Game.
Sure.
Very
but
basic.
Right, but you have to think about it as every single component is a joke.
Yeah,
Every single
and
thing.
I like that in theory, but I think that when they are, so many of them are like formalistic jokes, and that like when they're just like not just that, it's kind of like you've set up all these plot things that are kind of all coming together. Like half of them are formalistic jokes and the other half are like jokes relating to the plot, and for me it just feels it feels very disorganized. Maybe this is just how my brain works, because I think that this is a weird problem that I have, but I'm just like, if it's kind of just a whole bunch of different stuff, it just feels like noise to me. It feels like a crowded room where everyone's talking. Like
Sure. Well, I totally get that. It's like watching a fight scene for me.
Well, and me too. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I check out a lot of times during fight scenes because
I
there's
instantly
just
check out.
too much going on. But when it's jokes, and so when you have some of them that are, now granted, I'm sure there are loads of visual gags in this movie that I completely miss.
I think that's part of the problem, is because I do miss the visual gags. Like half the time I miss them, and so a lot of times if I get that feeling of like, oh, I'm missing a visual gag, but sometimes that feeling can happen just by there being too many things that I'm thinking like, oh, maybe this makes more, maybe they're joking, the dubbing is a joke because of something that's happening visually, because why would they be joking about that when they're already making a joke about them yelling?
Yeah, and some of it you just have to know or know enough about what they're referencing.
Yeah, and a lot of the jokes are like that, which is also like, for me, having like a very weird pop culture break. Like I know things 90s also probably not as sharp on, so that does not help to like give me any context. But there is a lot of those jokes, so like you get some of them and then other ones you're like, okay, well this is obviously referring to something I just don't really know about. But then I did get a lot of them too, but they're just kind of like, yeah, there's a lot of things that are specific to the 90s, which I know I said before.
Well, and I didn't mind all of the jokes coming at once in this scene, because it's a lot of musical theater stuff, and I get that.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Yeah, the musical theater stuff, that can be fun. I think when it is, yeah, it's just for me like that there's too many categories of kinds of jokes, which it might just be my personality. I don't know. I wonder if it's like I'm like trying to read too much into this, but like I think for me I'm very big picture kind of, and I wonder if part of that is the way my vision works.
Could be.
Because Could be. I don't have central vision, so I'm like definitely think of things if they don't kind of, if the details don't come together to be like a cohesive whole, then that for me is just like, I'm like, what's going on? Like I just get overwhelmed by it.
This whole scene, these whole series of jokes, they don't really move the plot along. Like they're funny and they're fun to watch, but they don't really move the story along, because she has come to deliver the message that if he goes to the archery competition, he'll die because they're gonna assassinate him. Right.
Which then leads to them needing to, like, because, oh God, what even happens, Robin?
Okay, so.
Yeah, go.
So they go to the archery. Of course they go to the archery contest because it's Robin Hood.
Right, because they're like, we're not going to go, but then it's the archery, so he's like, well, maybe we will go.
We're going to go. Yeah. So, and this is probably one of my favorite visual gags, because I don't know, I can't trust my eyes to know what I saw.
Okay. I wonder
maybe you can confirm this.
Yeah.
So they all have to go in disguise. So all of the main merry men wear women's clothing.
Right, which is, we don't really know, which I guess is just because that's the disguise.
Yeah, it's, you know,
It's not. They don't. It doesn't have to be that they're women.
No,
but
it
it's.
doesn't-
I
it
don't
doesn't
think it's
have to be, but
offensive.
it's not. It's not offensive.
Yeah.
I wasn't offended by it.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
It's you know, it's ha ha ha. It's funny. They're cross dressing and it's men in women's clothing. Ha ha ha. You know. Okay.
Well, because
whatever.
they're already in tights, which is
True.
also funny.
They're already wearing tights. But it's also a trope that at least I'm used to, or that people are used to. It's just, you know,
like wearing women's clothing.
they're
as
men disguised as women.
right? Which
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on the. I think more and more probably, especially as we have more like trans, right? But there is ways of like it being, you know, drag can be a lot of fun.
Sure,
Like it doesn't
yeah.
necessarily have
Yeah.
to be like commenting on someone's identity, because I think there already is like a very. I don't think, you know, drag is not that problem. I mean, it could be problematic, but as a thing, it is not problematic.
Well, also if you noticed, so they have the costumes on, but they did nothing to their faces. Like they also have beards, and they didn't put any makeup on.
right.
So, you know, and again, that's another joke. Like, why wouldn't they care enough? Like, if they were really going to disguise themselves,
Why would they?
You would think that the guards would see them and go, "Oh, obviously."
Right.
But you know they don't, because that's comedy. And then of course you have
comedy.
and then you have Blinkin, like in this crazy.
Wait, because his boobs are all
Yeah,
messed
his
up.
boobs are all messed up. They tell him he looks like a Picasso. He's got like uniboob
He
over
kind of does look like a Picasso.
us. Fix your boobs.
Which, I mean, that's not that. I don't think that's bad.
No, because that's a callback from the very beginning, where when Robin introduces himself, there's that sculpture of the naked lady in the house that he's feeling up, because he can't, obviously
Right.
he can't tell that that stone statue isn't Robin.
Oh yeah. Oh right. Which we
Robin,
didn't talk about that.
You
Right.
grew some nice boobs.
Yeah. Which also, again, not like making it, because he's blind, making him seem like he's just a small child that doesn't understand anything.
Right. Well, and the
Like,
fact
it
that,
doesn't really track.
yeah, no, and the fact that like you really can't tell the difference between stone and skin.
Right,
and,
right.
And again, it's talking about this stuff and analyzing this stuff. You know, it's a joke.
Right. I think, yeah, it is, and it's hard, because I think that it can be really difficult to like break apart why something's funny, but that's different than why something isn't funny. And sometimes there is like, because I think it kind of, I guess, kind of comes down to like what the perspective is, which I know is kind of what we've been saying, but it does feel very like it not just cited, but it's also that it's kind of just like woefully ignorant of like how blindness would actually be, like that's so far from the point.
And that's what I was mostly grumbling about, is they didn't even try. Like
Right.
that. Also, the fact that they didn't try, and these jokes are
They're not
I've
even
seen them
consistent.
before, and they're not funny.
Yeah, because they're very, and I don't think it's because this was 93, like they've been tropes for a long time.
These are old, these
Yeah.
are old jokes that are just
They
getting
definitely
used.
didn't start with this.
Yeah. This is the visual joke that I don't think I got. So the merry men's disguises at the archery tournament are shitty. They're meant to be shitty. Like, obviously we can tell they're men dressed as women.
Right.
However, it keeps cutting to Robin Hood, who's firing arrows. Call me crazy, but that's Sam Elliott.
Oh, wait, what? Wait, when he's shooting?
Because Robin Hood's supposed to be in disguise too.
Oh, right.
That mustache looks too good to be like something that was put on his face.
Oh, yeah.
That's Sam Elliott.
I don't know.
I will Google this. Google this because I'm convinced. I am convinced it's Sam Elliott, and that's hilarious. That's because he has no speaking rules, and then of course he's unmasked, but he has no words. He has no lines. It's just Sam Elliott, because that's Robin Hood's disguise.
Right. And oh yeah, now to look on IMDb, because I can't say for sure, because it doesn't look like him at all.
No, it doesn't look like Carrie Elway's at all.
Yeah, and his
it's not
like his
him.
body changes, so it's like
And his face is definitely different.
Which I really struggled with being like, wait, so which one's him then? Because neither of them are him.
Okay, well, he's not on the cast list.
Okay.
So I don't know. Maybe it really was a good mask or something, but I am goddamn convinced it was Sam Elliott. Anyway, okay. All of this, we've been leading up to all of this because this is my favorite moment in the movie, which actually involves Blinkin.
Oh, hey.
And this is like the correct way to do it, like a blind joke.
Yes, no, this is the only good moment. I agree. This is his only good joke.
So Robin is about to fire.
Because they set it up like it's the grassy knoll.
Right. He's the assassin, Dirty Ezio.
Right.
I don't know why that name is so funny. But so Dirty Ezio is in the tower.
Yeah.
Just exactly like the grassy knoll, and he pulls out his little mini crossbow, which is actually really cool.
Yeah,
he can't have a gun.
Yeah, because a gun would be just too anachronistic.
Right,
so they make it like basically like a gun arrow.
Yeah. So and he's gonna assassinate Robin. So Robin is about to shoot because they go through this whole thing about like, does he get an extra shot? And then everybody pulls out the script because they have to check.
Right, which doesn't fully make sense.
It's a meta joke.
It's a meta joke.
They have to literally consult the script to their own movie to figure out if Robin Hood gets another shot or not.
Yeah, which I think for me, I am like too literal, and that I'm like, wait a second. So if they have to consult the script, is this part in the script?
Yes, it's probably in the script.
Right. Well, no, I know, but like in the world of the movie.
Oh, gotcha.
Is this
okay.
now, if they're consulting the script, is the part where they're consulting the script in the script? It's like kind of like you broke my computer brain.
Yeah,
is basically what happened.
Whereas I've watched like 6 seasons of Community, and I enjoy meta humor. So this got a chuckle out of me, but it's not really groundbreaking because like meta humor is the thing now. It's
yeah, and I
thing.
love meta humor that's making fun of the formalistic things, like that kind of meta humor I really like, when it's just like, oh, we're in a movie, isn't it funny that we're in a movie and we know that? And I'm like, no, it's not funny because I know you're in a movie.
Well, okay, so they pull the scripts out, and we realize that Robin Hood, yes, gets another shot. So as he is attempting to take his shot, Dirty Ezio from the castle fires the gun.
Right.
And Blinkin turns around and
grabs
the
it.
arrow
We
right
both-
out of the sky.
This is a podcast where we literally both did it
Grab
in
the
unison.
arrow. Yes.
Because
Yes.
it's the only fun part.
Yes. Grabs the arrow right out of the sky, and all the merry men in Robin Hood are just, astounded, like, how did you do that? What's it? And Blinkin is like, oh, I can hear it coming from a mile away.
Yeah.
And then he turns around and goes, who's talking?
Right.
Okay, so I like humor like that. That works because you punched him up.
Right, and you're making fun of yourself too, like
Right.
Mel Brooks making fun of himself for making this character so dumb.
Right. Like he gets this one moment, and then who's talking?
Yeah. But that was funny. You could have done that the whole movie. Could have made it I mean,
that could have been his thing. Like Robin Hood has projectiles, fired at him through the entire movie.
Right.
And what if Blinkin was there to like catch them or
Which,
something?
I get that you are setting up that he's dumb the whole movie, so that then that works better as because it is like
comes out of
climax. It is
nowhere.
the climax of the film, so it feels more like, oh, well, we've underestimated him this whole time. I do wonder how much just the fact that he is a servant, it's really hard to make him feel.
But even though he is a servant, I mean, he's still one of the crew. I mean, he's still a merry man.
But I think that the problem is you have, as a blind person, the joke you make about blind people is the incompetence joke.
And what you're kind of talking about is messing around with the Harlequin trope in Commedia dell'arte.
Ooh, I don't know do it. Tell me.
Well, so the Harlequin is the person who is They are made to serve someone, a master, but they are also always smarter than and cleverer and know what's happening.
Yes.
Doreen is a really good example of that in Tartuffe. She is the maidservant that knows these two idiots are supposed to fall in love and knows that Tartuffe is scamming the family, but no one will believe her because she's a dumb servant.
Right.
But she's not. She's the most capable person in the play.
Right, exactly. And I think that that's usually what... And I mean, I guess you can even do that with a blind character, theoretically. But that's like to have the character that is... Yeah, the competent servant that's underestimated the entire movie. You can also... Yeah, I mean, you can also do that with a blind character, but the way that the kind of... It's just more of a buffoon kind of blind character, like, because that's not at all what the trope that you're going for of like, oh, they're so aware of what's going on even though they're blind, like, which you could do a trope of that, but it's just like the incompetent buffoon trope, which is worse.
I don't I don't think Blinkin is a horrifically I don't know if I'd go so far as to say he's a buffoon, like, but yeah, I don't, because it is hard. It's a very fine line because he is capable enough to do everything. You know,
right? I mean, it's very inconsistent what he's not capable of doing.
Right.
Like, and it's like because it doesn't track with blindness. And
he is incompetent and a buffoon when the script says he is incompetent and a buffoon.
Right. Like, it's hard to talk about this stuff because it isn't like he feels very inconsistent in pretty much every way. Like, his relationship in the plot is inconsistent, his abilities are inconsistent, his, like, even just like the concept of what blindness is and how it would affect someone feels very inconsistent because sometimes it feels like, okay, I guess this is like a little bit more, so there's just like, it's so, and then he doesn't have an arc at all. There's like absolutely no arc to him.
No, because he is the stock joke character.
Right. Which, like, I mean, but it is like every character is the joke character in this movie.
If you're not one of the main characters, if you're not Robin Hood, Maid Marian, the sheriff, or John,
well,
you're a joke.
Sheriff and John are a joke too.
They're joke. I mean, he is part of the comedic relief, but he is not the sole comedic relief.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that he's just such a static character. From the beginning, he's like Robin Hood's servant. And then in the end, he's Robin Hood's servant. Like, there's just literally he doesn't interact with any characters in a meaningful way. Like, you know, it's like he only interacts with them as jokes. Like, he doesn't really form relationships. Like, and the first thing we see of him, which we didn't talk about this when we were talking about it, but like when he's introduced, he says like he's the one who's delivering the news to Robin Hood that his entire family has died, and so he's just like, so there's this long thing of him being like, of Robin Hood being like, well, at least, you know, my brother is, you know, oh, your brother died at the Crusades, like, at least my dad, oh, your dad, like, was killed, you know, and this goes on for a long time, but it's just like the part of the joke is that, like, Robin Hood's very sad about this, and Blinkin's like, well, just letting you know, like, oh, you've been away for a long time, so he, like, has no emotional attachment to any characters at all. Like, he's very, very, like, emotional, relationship wise, like, he just kind of exists in a void, and, like, as a character also does not change at all. So he just kind of maintains a very, like, just like that you could, any point of the movie is all the same. Like, I think that's why we can't even remember where these jokes happen, because he doesn't change. Like, there's absolutely no character development.
Well, that and it's just joke upon joke upon joke upon joke upon joke. I mean, it's rapid fire. I mean, there's so much.
It's very dense.
Yeah, whereas like a movie like Airplane, which is interesting because Airplane is the same way. It's joke upon joke upon joke. But I feel like I'm better at following Airplane. I don't know why.
I mean, I do think this movie has too many jokes to its detriment, because there's not a consistent because when you're making a movie, I don't think just because something's a comedy means that you can just make the plot so convoluted or confusing that it's incoherent. Like, or even if it's not like you can kind of follow the plot, but the fact that it's so unmemorable, I think like you still should be like, when you're making a comedic film, you still want to like try to make a good film that like if you take out the jokes, there's still something that it feels genuine in some way, like it feels like there's an arc of some kind, or even if there's not an arc, it feels true to life. Like, like I think a movie that can either have an arc or feel very true to life, for me, that's like enough. But when it doesn't have either of those things, it's difficult to like, it just feels like a bunch of jokes. It's like more like a stand-up set or something, like it just feels very disorganized. And then it's like, well, you don't need to be a movie if like you could just be a stand-up set if you're just not gonna like the movie stuff.
Yeah, I think you would like any of Mel Brooks's other things because they're more they have plots, right? There's joke upon joke upon joke, but they have plots,
right? And because you can do that and it can work really well.
Well, and it's funny because in this film they'll make callbacks. They made references to like Blazing Saddles and different things, and it just kind of made me sad because I was like, wow, I could be watching those movies right now, but I'm watching Men in Tights. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, it is really it's difficult to really find too much charm in the movie.
Well, and it's sad because like the performances aren't bad. Like no one is acting badly. But you compare it to movies like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and it's like, wow, I could be watching Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which, in my humble opinion, is a perfect movie.
Yeah, and I do think that like Monty Python's a lot better at like kind of, even if it is like born of like sketch, like they're better at like maybe making something like having cohesive jokes. Yeah, they kind of, so because that makes it more memorable. I feel like when you have like joke soup, it is just not very memorable because there's like, maybe you find one of them funny, so then maybe you'll remember that joke, but then you're gonna forget the rest of the movie if you like, it's all you'll remember is a joke you found funny.
Well, and I mean, and it's hard to compare this to Monty Python because you're also comparing American humor to British humor, which are two totally different things in some respect.
In some ways, I don't know if they're that different. I mean, like, because I'm thinking of it more from a formalistic perspective, which I don't think I think, if a movie works in England, it's going to work in the US. If we're just talking formalistically, like, kind of how it's structured, that feels pretty basic kind of, like, movie stuff. But then, I guess, because I think also, like, some of these conversations we're having are coming from, like, the perspective, like, you come from it from a more actorly perspective, I come from it from a more yep, that's how you say it, that's perspective. And I think that definitely also shapes kind of, like, for me, if the plot not working has a big effect on me, and then, like, kind of not, like, I'm always looking at things from the big picture again, partly just also because I'm thinking of it from the filmmaking perspective more than I am from, like, a performance perspective. And I think that even just that, like, angle can kind of change what bothers you and what doesn't too. but yeah. So we're almost at the end. We've almost made it. So they have the archery tournament. Of course, Robin wins because he's Robin Hood, and he is caught and apprehended by the sheriff of Rottingham. Yep. And Maid Marian is given a choice. She can marry the sheriff or watch Robin Hood die, be hung, basically. Right. And of course she picks she'll marry the sheriff because obviously she doesn't want Rottingham to die. Or Robin Hood to die.
She doesn't want Robin Hood to die. Yes, thank you. And we get that interesting exchange between Rottingham and Maid Marian. You could have my body, but you'll never have my heart and my mind and my soul. Sheriff is like, okay, I'm good with that. It definitely. That whole thing. I don't know. It's kind of a bit of a brave choice because you think about, like, villains and whatnot, you know, they want to get the girl in the end, but it's not about their brains, it's not about their body, it's not about their brains, it's not about the heart, it's not about their personality, you know.
Right.
But this, they actually say it here.
Right. I guess it's, kind of like very very specific. I mean, I think for me, what I struggle with at the end is like that it's really hard to find things funny when it's like pretty, because then it goes into like basically a rape scene,
right?
And like that makes it feel like I stop being able, especially even when it's a forced marriage, it feels like scary. And so I think there's like that scary alarms are going off, that it's like the bar for making something funny just becomes so much higher because you're just like fear response. And then I think that like really, really clouds the ability to.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that I have a pretty weird, twisted sense of humor as far as like what really makes me laugh. However, rape is never going to make me laugh.
Right.
It's not funny.
Yeah,
I don't care. You can allude to it. You can say it. You can. It's not funny.
Yeah, and I mean, like you can make some. I think there are like ways to make jokes that like shed light on the problem. That's not. It's extremely hard. It has to come from a very like perspective of survivors. Like that has to be very clear that it's coming from that perspective. And I think that like the voice that it's in really matters, and it's a lot to pull it off in a narrative thing like this in a movie. It's really hard because it's not as clear like where the kind of the humor, it's making rape jokes that are funny is extremely hard to do.
Yeah,
like it is.
I don't know if I've ever seen like a successful deployment of a rape joke. I
mean, like, because you have to be making fun of rapists, not actual rape, and to do that is not like, because I think it is important to be like, because there are women who like make jokes about like experiences they've had like with being raped, and I think that like coming from a survivor perspective, there is ways that you can like use that as like kind of it's like Jews making jokes about the Holocaust, and since we're on Mel Brooks, that's it.
But
that's
specifically, I would like to make it known. Specifically, like Mel Brooks, he makes jokes about a lot of things, but the Holocaust is something that he will never make a joke about.
Well, like, but he does make a joke about. I mean, Springtime for Hitler is a joke about the Holocaust.
Well,
what is the difference?
So the difference being that he is satirizing and lampooning Nazis. And making farcical Hitler and Nazis.
Right.
He is not satirizing, lampooning, making farcical fun of the Jewish people or their experience.
Right.
Nowhere in Springtime for Hitler is there mention of the Holocaust.
Right. Well, and I think that it's also like finding ways to, and that's what I mean when I say that you can make fun of rapists and that can be funny. Like, because I think that that's the important distinction, is like Springtime for Hitler is the equivalent with rape jokes is making fun of a rapist.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Like, because you're making fun of Nazis, making fun of rapists. Like, both of them should be lampooned because they're both bad, awful things that should not, humans that don't deserve, our sympathy, obviously. So I think that, like, when it's not funny, yes, it's making fun of, oh, haha, so many Jews died during the Holocaust, super funny. Or like, oh, funny how people get raped. That's really funny that they were raped. Like, neither of those are funny.
No.
So I think that that's why you have to be very tactical, and you also have to be very clear in what perspective it's coming from. And that's why I think that like sometimes you can pull it off when you're doing like stand-up or monologuing in some ways. Like, I think that in a narrative movie you can do it, but it's even like with the producers, it is still like coming from the perspective of like it is meta commentary. The movie is itself meta commentary on like the on the Jewish experience of, and that is like a very like culturally specific thing of like Jews making fun of Nazis and and kind of using it as a coping mechanism. And so I think that like is a way to do it, but you have to like devote the entire movie to meta commentary to make that work, you know. And I think like Inglourious Bastards I love, but is another thing where you're kind of like trying to you're framing the entire thing as a way of kind of using meta commentary just to have the climax, just to invoke rape when it's not needed to be there. There's no reason for it. Like, and in a comedy, when you are not necessarily, the whole movie isn't like, this is a female perspective. This is about the person who's like getting raped using this as, you know, it's none of that. Like, there's just no, that, and it feels really just like, wow, why is this happening? You know, like it just seems abrupt.
It's just a bunch of really weird off-color jokes that don't really work.
Yeah.
But it's skipping around.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so we're at the wedding, and by this point we've met Mel Brooks' character, who is a rabbi. He's a traveling rabbi.
Right.
Who likes to perform circumcisions with a tiny little guillotine.
Which it is good. Which he's like, I guess it's before circumcision was on babies, because he makes a joke on like, oh, it should get younger crowd.
Oh,
which
right.
Like,
that's like it's a throwaway joke. Yeah, it's such a weird joke.
It's a weird concept.
Yep. So we have the rabbi who's at the wedding, and everybody's at the wedding, and they're gonna marry Maid Marian. And she gets captured because she says she'll never do it, but she gets captured by the sheriff of Rottingham and taken up to the tower, you know, so he can Dave Chappelle says, I think they're gonna deflower her in the tower,
right?
And the he's trying to get the chastity belt off. And at one point, he uses a jackhammer,
right,
to try and do it.
Which I guess is anachronistic in a way that they don't really bother trying to hide.
Oh, it's a dick joke. Absolutely.
Well, it's a dick joke, but it's also anachronistic, because why would they have a
right, a jackhammer? Yeah, no,
yeah.
That's just
like, because with the arrow they try to right. Like, well, that
is the humor that we're in. That is the style of humor. Because at one point, Maid Marian walks into the room and claps and turns the lights on.
Right. I guess that's a true of another thing that doesn't.
You have to accept those things.
Yeah.
So he has a jackhammer, and he's like going to town on her crotch, basically, because that's where the chastity belt is. And she says something like, you can do whatever you want, but I will never submit.
Yeah.
That whole thing makes me feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah. It sucks. I don't like it.
I don't enjoy that.
Because it's just, there's not, the angle is like, it's a dick joke, which is like, no.
Oh yeah, no, it's completely.
It's not. Dick jokes can't be funny when you're in a rape scene. I love dick jokes, and they're not funny when you're in a rape scene.
This is an example of bits and pieces of this movie that are dated and have not aged well.
Yeah.
I mean, the rabbi calls the merry men feculous.
Yeah.
He meets them and he's like, oh, they're like, oh yeah, we're the merry men. And they're like, feculous? No, we're straight.
Which also is like, there's no gay characters, so.
Right.
We're not even really trying.
They're just manly men who like to wander around the forest wearing tights.
Right. It is kind of amazing given, like, 93. I mean, in full disclosure, because I'm a baby, that is the year I was born. But it like doesn't feel still that long ago. You know, what, 3 years after the ADA existed. But well,
I mean,
it's all recent stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I was born in 87, so
yeah. You were 6.
Yeah, I was 6 when this movie came out.
But it's still like it is kind of nice to look back and like, actually it feels like we've come farther from Robin Hood Men in Tights than City Lights. Very weird. Doesn't really make any sense considering they're 62 years apart, and the one that's much older is but it, like, I think there a lot of the stuff about like sexual politics and obviously like ableism and a decent amount of the racial stuff too is all very much like, oh wow, this is just not a thing you would ever do now. Like, it is just so, it's offensive, not in a way of like, oh well, some people find that stuff funny still. It's like, no, just you just wouldn't do it. Like, it just doesn't exist anymore. Like, I feel like that's the kind of stuff that, like, especially in a movie, I mean, maybe it's just because Hollywood put so much money into the movies now.
Well,
but,
and the question is, like, could you make a Mel Brooks movie today?
I mean, it depends, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It depends on what.
Well, you can't make a movie
movie
today unless you're a superhero.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother discussion.
My opinion.
Yeah. No, I hear you there.
But yeah. I mean, I think this is probably a bad example though of Mel Brooks.
I would absolutely agree, 100%. If we were talking about Mel Brooks, if that was the topic of this show, Men in Tights might get mentioned, but it's not
Right.
Like, if you
right.
came
It's
up
very
to,
atypical.
Yeah, if you came up to me and said, "I've never seen a Mel Brooks movie. Which should I start with?" Oh my God, there are so many.
You're like Robin Hood Men in Tights, obviously. No.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there are so many better versions.
Yeah. So I think that's. I think you couldn't make this movie today, obviously, but it is like, I think even at the time people were like, well, Mel Brooks messed up. Not messed up is not the right word, but like not good.
From what I saw, it got decent reviews when it was released. I mean, I don't think it was lauded as like something that like the producers was or Spaceballs was, or
Right. But I mean, it was coming off, I think, a lot of more beloved movies. So in contrast, I think, because I don't think it did very well either, like box office wise.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look that up.
But yeah, I mean, I think that it's extremely of its time, and it's because it is so of its time. It's also doesn't even feel. And it doesn't have enough things that make it feel like it kind of rises up to be relevant past its time either. Like, because there are some things that are of their time that you can kind of look at and still feel, like at the time they were very important. And so then in the future, you can say, like, even if they don't work as well now, it says something about that time period. I mean, I guess this does say something about this time period, but it definitely doesn't rise up to be like, oh, well, this was important. Like, this was not that important for the time period even. It's more just like a, kind of a window into the time period, but not necessarily relevant in any way.
Yeah, if you're going to watch a movie from the 90s, this is not going to be my first recommendation.
Yeah, it's not, I don't think there's any category in which you're like, well, if it's Robin Hood movies, probably wouldn't be this one either.
I mean, maybe.
That's probably the one where it's most likely to make into the top recommendation is Robin Hood movie.
Yeah, it's a fun movie to throw on with your buddies in college and laugh at, which is how I watched it, which is, what I did.
That's good. Maybe watching it alone is not a good strategy in this case.
No, I absolutely 100% agree, because watching it alone, I was just kind of tired and bored.
Yeah, it is.
I was like, this is definitely something you need to watch with a bunch of friends.
Yeah, and I think that it is like, it is weirdly like, I don't think I did a lot of like laughing while I was watching it.
Yeah, no, I chuckled. There were definitely points where I chuckled, but I don't remember like a full-throated laugh.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to wrap everything up, obviously Robin Hood saves Marion. The sheriff is killed, but then revived by Latrine, who takes him off to be her sex slave. And the key fits in the lock, and...
Wait, isn't there something weird?
Yeah, it doesn't fit. It's not the right key.
Right. But then it does fit?
No, that's the joke. That's the very last joke, is the key doesn't fit. It fits in the lock, but it doesn't open the belt.
Oh, it doesn't open.
Mm-hmm.
So does it not open at all? I can't remember.
No, it doesn't open at all.
So she never gets to have sex?
I don't know. But I could listen to Carrie Elway's Call Me Darling for like the rest of eternity. Everything's okay. because he called me darling. Everything's fine.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
That's the movie.
That's the movie. As far as this is a weird one because as far as like if anything could be done to Blinkin to fix him, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of just have to have a different movie. I think maybe, I mean, at least you could upgrade him to sidekick, because, like, that's the other thing, is Robin Hood has a sidekick. So it's like, he does it, it's not like, okay, well, the servant is his sidekick. It's like, no, he has a sidekick.
Well, yeah, he has,
So
he has Little
that.
John. We didn't even talk about Little John, because
that's a whole thing.
I don't even remember him.
And there is the one thing that bothers me at the end, and very like it's like the last thing in the movie is when Dave Chappelle is like does like a monologue or something at the very end, and then Blinkin is like, and then he ends by saying like, you know, something about being referencing that he's black, and then Blinkin's like, he's black.
Right, I had completely forgotten about that.
Yeah,
and this is really funny to see Dave Chappelle do all these things when you know in the future, like he's gonna go on to do one of the most famous sketches in comedy history, Black White Supremacist.
Yeah,
Clayton Bigsby, the Black White Supremacist. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, it is a weird. I don't know how I feel about that joke. I think it's kind of. I mean, it's not even fully a joke, really.
No, it's just it's a throwaway line,
right?
But it gets into the whole like race joke relation thing, and it's like I don't.
Right, and that race is entirely visual, which is like obviously people's cultural backgrounds, like are not just visual. There is, I mean, yeah, it's more complicated than that.
But yeah, could there be anything to be done to fix it? No. This is one of those where it's just like it is of its time.
Yeah.
And and Blinkin is such a small character. It's not about him. This is not his story. It's Robin Hood's story. Right.
And he has very little, it's really easy to like forget that he's in the movie. Like, because every time we've been talking about the movie, I'm just like, oh, anything we could talk about, it doesn't even involve him. Like, he's just, like, it really is.
This was a hard one, because when I remember watching it for the first couple of times, I thought I remembered Blinkin having a bigger part.
I mean, I think he's sort of, like, I think he weirdly has more screen time than it feels like. Like, I think if you actually looked at how much screen time he gets, you'd be like, wow, it seems like he had less than that. You know, like, I think it's also deceptively, like, it feels like he's in it for less than he actually is, too. Because when I was looking back, I was like, yeah, he's in a lot of the movie. I just don't have any really thing that I'm excited to talk about specifically about him, even if I do remember him being in a lot of scenes. He feels very, like, he just doesn't want anything. Again, I think it is partly the inconsistencies, and that it's just kind of like coming up with different blind jokes, not all of which even make sense. So just to kind of, since we've already talked about basically how we feel about the movie, we can both give our rating. I think I would give this movie a 2015. I feel like it's like, you know, with 2020 being like just entirely sighted person movie, I feel like it succeeds that it is just so far from a blind person, that I would give it 2015. What about you?
I would probably give this then 2010 maybe.
2010. Oh, nice. Yours is worse than mine.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder if we could ever get into the negative numbers. That's maybe stretching it a little too far.
Yeah, I mean, as 2010 as far as the character of Blinkin goes.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's just
not even close, I guess. I mean, I think we've already said a lot of it, which is why our final thoughts are not like all that specific, because I feel like we've talked about all the problems. But yeah,
I mean, and this isn't a movie I would tell people like to actively avoid. You know, it's
Right.
you know, in the end, it's fluff. You
Yeah.
know, it's not going to change the world. It's not going to change how you think about anything.
Yeah.
To be honest, it's this really goofy, weird 90s time capsule.
Yeah, it's good for a time capsule. But yeah, I think it's also something that, like, with so much great TV and lots of good movies coming out, like, I don't think anyone has time either, you know. I think it's one of those things where I wouldn't tell people, I agree that, like, you don't need to avoid it, but it's just like, it seems like there's probably other things that seem more pressing to be watching with all the good stuff coming out these days. But yeah, so yeah, that's our very unenthusiastic blindness wise
long-winded discussion
Yeah.
about Mel Brooks, Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Yeah, there you have it. That's it.
Yeah,
Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Robin
Hopefully,
Men in Tights.
hopefully next week we'll have a little bit more enthusiasm.
Something a little bit more meatier to discuss.
Yeah.
What are we discussing next
Oh
week?
yeah, that it comes to our next thing.
Yes.
So I have picked this movie that I saw a long time ago and don't remember a lot of, and I apologize now because it is 2 hours and there's a lot of subtitles. It's in many different languages.
Damn it.
So I'm very sorry. I know, I'm just here to torture you. It is called The White Countess.
Ooh, fun.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is a very silly reason why I watched it, but I was for a time a Lee Pace completist.
Oh.
Just love him. And so I watched all the movies he's in, and he's barely in this movie, but I did, because I was just watching all the movie he's in, I was like, oh, it's about a blind person, so it'll be interesting to go back and watch it, like, from a more critical lens, especially with blindness, but yeah, I think it's about the main character is blind, so we're gonna have a lot more to talk about.
Great.
Yes.
Yes, please. Yes.
So yeah, so that's a little preview for next week, and then we can move on to the things that we've enjoyed this week. Our very fun title. I think you went first last time, so I can go first.
Yeah, you
this
go
time.
first.
There's a podcast that I really like that I want to shout out today, called The Dream. I don't know if you've heard it, but it's like the first season was about multi-level marketing, basically, and just all the different aspects of that. And it is a really interesting show, and it's just very it's a lot of fun and fascinating, because there are so many layers of, like, the kind of, like, cultiness of multi-level marketing. It's really fascinating to me.
This sounds absolutely fascinating.
It's great.
Yeah, I got involved a couple of times in multi-level marketing companies, and they're just, ooh boy.
Yeah. It's intense. Yeah. So you should listen to this. This is my good
So what's it
recommendation,
called?
too. It's called The Dream.
Okay.
And it's just they just started somewhat recently. They're the second season of it, and this one is about, like, wellness, like MLM kind of stuff. So I'm very excited, and it's really interesting because it is, like, super like that kind of overlap of kind of wellness, especially when it has to do with kind of people being ignored by doctors and then them going to other things. And I think, like, that's kind of how the first episode they're framing it. And so it's really fascinating. So I am catching up, because I'm catching up on all my podcasts, because I have a million of them. But I am starting to listen to the second season now, and I'm really enjoying it. So yeah,
I will check that out.
Yes,
that
do
sounds
it.
Fascinating.
it is.
I would like to shout out an album.
Ooh.
So I am super late to the party on this one, because this album was released July of last year. However, it's by one of my favorite local bands, the PDX Broadsiders.
Oh, yeah.
They are a fantastic band, 2 gals and a guy, and they sing about nerdy things, pop culture things. They sing about math and science. They sing about anxiety and how to cope. The album is relatable, current, and the band is PDX Broadsiders. And I mean, I like all the songs on the album, but there's a great, probably my absolute favorite, and the one that I've listened to on repeat constantly, is called The House of the Wind, which deals with stage fright and singing and pursuing your talents. It's also a tribute to the Name of the Wind books.
Oh, which I don't know them.
Oh, you should read them. They're great. They're dense, thick fantasy novels. They're fantastic.
That's awesome.
You should listen to them. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I need to listen to books ever. I'm so bad about that.
Yeah, no, they're great. So the song is called House of the Wind. There's also a song called Orpheus, which is a Me Too anthem, basically.
Ooh.
So that's really cool.
Nice.
And then, like I said, songs about anxiety and depression and fun stuff. Together Breakfast.
Fun stuff together at breakfast?
Yeah. From Steven Universe, Together Breakfast.
Oh, my sister and I, we sing all those Steven Universe songs.
Yeah. So there isn't a specific song about Together Breakfast, I don't think. But
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'd have to look around. But they sing a song about Together Breakfast. The first track on the album is Let the Wild Rumpus Start.
Ooh, like, wild things are.
Exactly. Yeah.
Words.
So, yeah, words are happening. So, yeah, the album is relatable current. The band is PDX Broadsiders. Check them out. You can find them on iTunes or YouTube, or support them and buy their CD. Thank you so much for listening, and tune in next week when we talk about The White Countess.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Super fun.
Okay, bye.
Bye.